My name is Marcus Martinez. I'm a war veteran, a terminal cancer survivor, and a witness to something most people would call impossible. In the 3 months of life I had left, I thought I knew how my story would end. Alone, in a hospital room, burdened with secrets that consumed me for 5 years. Secrets about an explosion in Kabul, about comrades who died because of me, about a German shepherd named Rex, who gave his life to protect me. But some stories refuse to die with us. Some truths find impossible ways to surface, and there are bonds of loyalty that not even death can break. This isn't just the story of a dying soldier, it's the story of how the dead sometimes return to fulfill promises, of how a dog can carry more than just hope, it can carry justice, and of how one seemingly delusional final request can expose a conspiracy that cost dozens of American lives. My canine companion died saving my life, and somehow his mission isn't over. You're going to meet Jake Patterson, a 22-year-old soldier who uncovered the truth about someone selling out his own comrades to the enemy. And you'll learn how a small military duffel bag, lost in an explosion 5 years ago, ended up in my hospital room carried by a dog that should have been dead. I know how this sounds. Believe it or not, and for a long time I didn't believe it myself, what happened in those last 3 months changed not just my fate, but exposed a betrayal that echoed through the highest ranks of the US military. This is a story about war, but also about redemption, about guilt, but also about forgiveness, about death, but more than anything about how love and loyalty can transcend any ending. If you've never believed in miracles, you might change your mind. If you've never believed the dead can speak, get ready to question everything you think you know about the boundaries between life and death, because this story, my story, begins exactly where it should have ended, with my final request before dying. A request everyone thought was a delusion, but that became the key to exposing one of the greatest betrayals in modern military history. My last wish was to hold Rex's collar one more time. What he brought with him that night changed everything. This is my confession. This is my truth. And this is proof that some promises are too sacred to be broken, not even by death. The nurse stopped at the door, clutching the clipboard to her chest like a shield. Her eyes looked at me with that familiar mix of pity and disbelief. "Mr. Martinez, are you sure? Your German shepherd died 5 years ago. It's in your medical records." I knew how it sounded. A 52-year-old man, ravaged by cancer, rambling about a dead dog. But I had to try. "Please," I whispered, my voice hoarse from the tubes they had removed the week before. "It's my final request. Just check." She sighed and made a note. "I'll speak to the doctor." When she left, I closed my eyes and let the morphine take me back. Back to Kabul. Back to the day I lost everything. Cancer had won. 3 months, the doctors said. I was alone in that hospital room, except for the memories that had haunted me since Kabul. The August heat in Afghanistan was suffocating, but not as heavy as the weight of guilt I carried. Our unit had lost 3 men the previous week in an ambush that seemed far too coordinated to be just Taliban luck. "Martinez, you and Rex are going with Jake to check out that convoy," Sergeant Thompson ordered that morning. "Intel says there might be wounded civilians." Rex had been my partner for 2 years. A golden-coated German shepherd with intelligent eyes that seemed to understand my words before I even spoke them. He had saved my life countless times, sniffing out explosives and detecting ambushes. Jake Patterson was the youngest in our unit, just 22, with a smile that never seemed to fade, even in the hell we lived in. He always carried a small duffel bag with letters from his girlfriend and pictures of his family. "Man, when I get out of here, I'm going to marry Sarah and buy a farm," he told me as we walked along the dusty road. "Rex can come live with us. How about it, buddy?" Rex wagged his tail and kept sniffing the path ahead. We never made it to the convoy. The bomb was buried exactly where our intel said we should pass. It wasn't luck, it was planned. I remember the white flash, the deafening sound, being thrown against a brick wall. When I came to, Jake was sprawled several meters away from me, motionless, his duffel bag scattered across the ground. Rex was under the rubble, gasping, his eyes finding mine one last time before they closed forever. "Jake! Jake!" I shouted, dragging myself toward him. Blood. So much blood. "Martinez!" His voice was barely a whisper. "The bag. Hide it. They sold us out." Those were his final words. When reinforcements arrived, I was holding Rex's body, repeating, "I'm sorry, buddy, I'm sorry," until I lost my voice. Jake's bag had vanished in the rubble, or at least that's what the report claimed. 3 soldiers dead, 2 wounded. Mission failed. I survived. They didn't. I came home with a Medal of Honor, and nightmares every night. Jake's family blamed me. I was the veteran. I should have protected the kid. His girlfriend Sarah looked at me like I was a ghost every time we crossed paths in town. I couldn't hold down a job. I couldn't keep relationships. I couldn't sleep without seeing Rex crushed beneath the rubble, without hearing Jake's voice asking me to hide something I never found. The drinking helped for a while. Then came the drugs. Then came the streets. When I found out about the cancer a year ago, I almost felt relieved. Finally, an honorable way out. But Rex showed up. It was Wednesday, 3 in the morning. I had fallen asleep, rare without the strongest meds. A noise in the hallway woke me, the sound of claws on linoleum. At first, I thought it was a hallucination. The morphine was wrecking my mind. But then I saw the silhouette in my doorway, a German shepherd larger than I remembered, slowly walking down the corridor. His paws made that familiar sound I knew so well. New scars marked his snout and legs, but the eyes were the same. "Rex," I whispered. He stopped and looked at me. For a moment the world stood still. Then he walked toward my bed, with the dignity only old dogs possess. In his mouth, he carried something that made my heart stop, a small military duffel bag, faded, torn, but unmistakable. The same one Jake, my comrade, had been holding when the bomb went off. "It can't be," I murmured, reaching out with a trembling hand. Rex laid the bag on my bed and sat down, exactly like he used to during our patrols, waiting for orders, waiting for me to do the right thing. My hands trembled as I opened the bag. The leather was dried out, stained with blood and sand, but the contents had been protected inside a plastic pouch. Inside, there was an audio recording on a small digital device, military documents, photographs, and a letter addressed to Sarah, Jake's girlfriend. With shaking fingers, I turned on the audio device. Jake's voice, young and determined, filled the silence of the room. "If someone's listening to this, I'm probably dead. I found out who's been leaking intel to the Taliban. Our routes, our targets, everything. It's someone on the inside, someone with access to mission plans." My blood ran cold. "I have the evidence, bank transfers, intercepted communications, all of it. Captain Morrison's been getting paid for months. He knows I found out. That's why they're sending me on this suicide mission today. Morrison, our own captain. Martinez is a good soldier. He doesn't know anything. If something happens to me, I hope he finds a way to expose the truth. The families of our fallen brothers deserve to know." The recording went on, detailing secret meetings, offshore accounts, names of informants. Jake had uncovered a network of corruption that extended far beyond our battalion. Rex stepped closer, his eyes still shining with that unwavering loyalty. I held the worn collar in my hands, feeling the cold metal against my skin. It was the same collar I had put on him the first day we met. "You came back for me, didn't you, boy?" He tilted his head just like he used to. But this time I understood it wasn't just nostalgia or a hallucination, it was justice. In the documents, Jake had mapped out every transaction, every compromised mission, every life lost because of Morrison's betrayal. There was also a list of investigative journalists Jake trusted, people who could expose the truth without being silenced. "Daniel Kowalski, Washington Post," I read aloud. "Sarah said he was interested in stories about military corruption." Rex barked once, softly, as if in approval. Over the next few hours, I read every document, listened to every recording. Morrison hadn't just been selling information. He had orchestrated the deaths of dozens of soldiers to cover his tracks. Jake was just one more obstacle he needed to eliminate. But this time, I had one last mission. The truth wouldn't die with me. I picked up the hospital phone and dialed the number Jake had written in the letter. "Daniel Kowalski. Mr. Kowalski, my name is Marcus Martinez. I'm a veteran of Afghanistan. I have evidence of military corruption that resulted in the deaths of American soldiers." There was a pause. "Mr. Martinez, it's 3 in the morning. How did you get my personal number?" "A dead soldier gave it to me. Jake Patterson. He died trying to expose the truth about Captain Morrison." Another pause, longer this time. "Where are you?" "St. Mary's Hospital, room 314. And Mr. Kowalski, I have 3 months to live. This may be your only chance to hear this story." He arrived within 2 hours, accompanied by a photographer and a digital recorder. Rex stayed by my side throughout the entire interview, like a silent guardian of the truth that was finally ready to be told. Kowalski was a serious man, wearing glasses, with the kind of focus only seasoned journalists possess. He listened to every recording, examined each document, and asked hundreds of questions. "Mr. Martinez, this evidence is explosive. Is Morrison still active?" "Promoted to major. Currently overseeing the training of new units. That means he still has access to sensitive information and still has the power to get more soldiers killed." Rex stood and walked over to the window, looking out at the dawn that was beginning to paint the sky pink. It was as if he knew his mission was nearly complete. "One question, Mr. Martinez," Kowalski said, putting away his recorder. "How exactly did this bag get to you? The official reports say Jake Patterson wasn't carrying any sensitive materials when he died." I looked at Rex, who had returned to my side. "How do you explain something you don't fully understand yourself?" "Let's just say the dead sometimes find ways to speak," I replied. Jake promised the truth would come out. He kept his promise. The story was published 3 weeks later. "Betrayal on the battlefield: How an American officer sold out soldiers for cash," hit the front page of the Washington Post and spread across every major news outlet in the country. Morrison was arrested. Other officers involved in the corruption network were exposed. Families of fallen soldiers finally learned the truth about what had happened to their sons. Sarah Patterson visited me in the hospital 2 days after the story went live. She brought flowers and tears. "Jake always said you were the best soldier he knew," she told me, holding my hand. "He would have been proud." Rex stayed by my side until the end, guardian of secrets that had finally come to light. In my final days, he lay on the floor beside my bed, his breathing in rhythm with mine. "You completed your mission, boy," I whispered to him one morning when the nurses could no longer hide the worry in their eyes. "Jake can rest now. We both can." Rex lifted his head and looked at me with those eyes that had seen so much, lost so much, and yet had never lost the ability to love unconditionally. "Some say it was a hallucination," I wrote in my last letter to Sarah. "But the bag was there. The truth was there, and Rex had kept his promise." The next morning they found me asleep, a smile on my face, and a German shepherd's collar in my hands. Rex had vanished, but his mission was complete. The truth had been revealed. Justice had been served, and 2 fallen soldiers could finally rest in peace. Jake Patterson was posthumously awarded the Congressional Medal of Honor. Rex was mentioned during the ceremony as the most loyal war dog ever to serve our country. I died 3 days later, knowing I had fulfilled my final mission. The guilt I had carried for 5 years had finally found redemption. And somewhere, in a green field where there are no bombs and no betrayals, Jake is throwing a ball for Rex, waiting for me. Loyalty, I learned, is the one thing even death can't break. Sarah Patterson held Jake's medal against her chest as she walked through Arlington National Cemetery. Autumn had come early that year, and golden leaves covered the ground like small promises of renewal. She had waited 3 months to make this visit. 3 months to process everything that had happened, to understand how the death of a man she barely knew had finally given meaning to the death of the man she loved. "Jake always talked about you," she said, stopping in front of the simple headstone marking the grave of Marcus Martinez. "He said you were the kind of soldier he wanted to be when he grew up." The wind blew gently through the oaks, carrying the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves. Sarah knelt and placed a small bouquet of daisies, Jake's favorite flower, beside those left by other visitors. "I thought you'd want to know," she continued, her voice cracking slightly. "Morrison was sentenced to life in prison. 7 other officers were indicted. The Department of Defense is overhauling all security protocols for overseas missions." She opened her bag and pulled out a yellowed letter. It was the last one Jake had written to her, found among the documents Rex had brought back. "Jake wrote this 3 days before he died. He knew he wasn't coming home, Marcus. He knew, but he still went because he trusted you. He trusted that you would find a way to tell the truth." Sarah carefully unfolded the letter and began to read aloud. "Sarah, my love, if you're reading this, it means I didn't make it back like I promised. I want you to know that every day I spent here was worth it, because I knew you were waiting for me. I've discovered things that could put my life in danger, but I can't stay silent while more soldiers die because of a few men's greed." Her voice faltered, but she kept going. Martinez is a good man. If something happens to me, he'll carry the guilt. But he shouldn't. He's the best of us all. If you ever meet him, tell him I don't blame him for anything. Tell him he was the brother I never had." Sarah folded the letter again, her tears leaving dark stains on the paper. "He didn't blame you, Marcus, he never did. And I don't either." A soft sound behind her made her turn. A German shepherd was standing a few feet away, watching her with intelligent, sorrowful eyes. He was older now, with a graying muzzle and visible scars on his legs, but something about him felt familiar. "Hey, boy," Sarah said softly, extending her hand. "Did you know Marcus?" The dog walked slowly toward her, as if he understood the gravity of the moment. When Sarah reached out to pet him, he pressed his head into her palm, a gesture that brought back all the stories Jake had told her about Rex. "You're Rex, aren't you?" she whispered. "Jake always said you and Marcus were inseparable." The dog looked into her eyes for a long moment, and Sarah had the strange feeling he was trying to tell her something. Then he walked to the headstone and lay down beside it, resting his head on his paws in a posture of eternal watch. "Daniel Kowalski told me about the night in the hospital," Sarah said, sitting on the grass beside the dog. "He said Marcus insisted you were there even when no one else could see you. He believed you brought Jake's bag back." Rex lifted his head and looked at her, as if waiting for her to continue. "I don't know if it matters," she went on, "whether you're real or just what we need to believe to make sense of all this, but I want you to know that Jake would be proud of both of you. You did the right thing." The sun was setting, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink. Sarah stood and brushed the dirt from her black dress. "I'm getting married in 6 months," she said, looking at Rex. "To a good man who understands that I'll always love Jake, but who's also taught me it's possible to love again. Jake would have liked him." Rex stood and walked to her, pressing his snout into her hand once more. Then he looked toward the sunset and began to walk away, slowly weaving between the headstones. "Rex," Sarah called out. He stopped and looked back. "Thank you. For everything." The dog tilted his head once, a silent farewell, and continued walking until he vanished into the shadows of the trees. Sarah stood still for a few more minutes, watching the spot where he disappeared. When she finally turned to leave, she noticed something she hadn't seen before. A small bronze plaque beside Marcus's headstone, glinting in the golden light of dusk. She knelt to read it. "In memory of Rex, War Dog, who served with distinction and loyalty alongside Sergeant Marcus Martinez and Private Jake Patterson. His unwavering devotion to truth and to his fellow soldiers exemplifies the very best of American military service. Some bonds are stronger than death." Sarah smiled through her tears. Someone, perhaps Daniel Kowalski, perhaps an anonymous veteran who had read the story, had made sure Rex would be remembered too. As she walked back to her car, Sarah felt a peace she hadn't known since Jake's death. The truth had been told, justice had been served, and somehow, through the courage of a dying man and the unwavering loyalty of a dog, love had triumphed over betrayal. 3 lives intertwined by fate, separated by war but reunited through the strength of what truly matters: loyalty, love, and the courage to do what's right, even when it costs everything. At the edge of the cemetery, Sarah looked back one last time. For a moment she could have sworn she saw 2 figures walking together among the graves, a young soldier and his faithful canine companion, finally free, finally at peace. She waved, knowing they couldn't see her, but hoping that somehow they knew their mission was complete, their deaths not in vain, and that they would be remembered not just as victims of war, but as heroes who chose truth above all else. Loyalty, Sarah thought as she drove away from the cemetery, really is the one thing even death can't break.